Secretary Negʻzeth defended his actions again yesterday. He compared the operation in the Caribbean to the fight against terrorism in Iraq and Afghanistan. Listen to what he said.
What people think is cavalier or cowboy about it is the exact opposite. These are the most professional Americans going through specific processes about what they can and cannot do, understanding all the authorities, all the laws of war, all the capabilities, and applying it to deter our adversaries. The catch and release program of the pat them on the head and release them so they can go back to the fight didn't work in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's not going to work in the Caribbean.
Like Secretary Negʻzeth, as I mentioned, you are an Iraq War veteran. What's your reaction?
Well, there was actually a vote by Congress to put us at war in Iraq and Afghanistan. There was no such vote. There was no such debate here in this situation. So the fact that we do have professionals, our military men and women are the utmost professionals. The problem is they've not been authorized to be at war. And by the way, the individuals in that vote were not even aimed at the United States. So everything that they've done has been illegal. It's illegal under international law. It's illegal under the Geneva Convention. And it certainly is even illegal under domestic law. It was essentially murder with that double tap strike.
I mean, that's a very strong statement. Murder, does that constitute a war crime? Is that what you're saying?
It is a war crime. It's illegal. However you put it, it's all illegal. Look, Dana, I've been shot down behind enemy lines. Under the laws of war, if a pilot bails out, he gets shot down, he bails out, he's in a rubber dinghy in the middle of the ocean. Under all the international laws of warfare, you are supposed to help render aid to that individual. Even if they have a radio and they're calling for their side to come pick them up, you're not allowed to go back in and kill them. Even if you know that they're going to conduct future operations against you. That's the Geneva Convention. And so everything that they did here was illegal. In fact, the two survivors were clinging to half of a boat in the middle of the ocean and had no access to a radio per the Admiral's briefing. And so, yes, all of it's been, the whole operation is illegal to begin with.
Senator, have you seen the video?
I have seen the video. And it is deeply disturbing. I am mostly concerned with the fact that we are putting our American servicemen and women in jeopardy here. We're putting them in jeopardy in case they ever get shot down. We're putting them in legal jeopardy. They could be brought up in international criminal courts. And so what we're doing here is taking those professionals, or utmost professionals, and putting them into harm's way. And that's what bothers me the most about what Pete Negʻzeth is doing. He is the least qualified Secretary of Defense in our nation's history, and he's very cavalier about doing things. The fact of the matter is only Congress can decide that we can go to war, and there was no such declaration made.
I just want to make sure that that I get this accurate. You have seen the classified video of this particular strike, the first strike, and then the double tap, as it's known.
No, I've just seen what's been available in the media.
Okay.
I've read the full report, but I've not seen the actual video. I've requested to be able to see the actual video. I've also been actually asked to see the after-action reports from the pilots and the drone operators, as well as the intelligence debrief that all pilots and drone operators conduct after they have completed a mission.
Senator, you said at the beginning of this conversation that you don't even know if this boat was headed to the U.S. What makes you say that?
Well, the Admiral who briefed Congress said that. And quite a few of the previous boat strikes, from what I've read, also were not all of them were headed towards the United States.
Senator, go ahead.
Look, if they really cared about drug traffickers, the president wouldn't be pardoning drug traffickers. They would be putting money towards law enforcement. So let's go after the drug traffickers, but let's not be committing international war crimes and internationally illegal actions to do it.
Can I just ask, just on the war crimes in the video, if you read the report, you haven't seen the video, what makes you so sure that this is murder and a war crime?
You had two survivors clinging to half of a boat, and then you went in and you killed them. That's a war crime.
Yeah. On the issue of the video, the President of the United States said this week that he had no problem releasing it. And yesterday, Secretary Negʻzeth didn't commit to that. He said, like, it's possible that we can't release it because we need to protect sources and methods. Does he have a point there?
No, he doesn't. Not at all. He could certainly release it to the members of Congress. We all have the top secret clearances, and we are, unlike him, unlikely to put things out on signal. And so we should have access to it. And in fact, the Democratic members of the Armed Services Committee have requested access to all of the video footage, not just the one in this particular boat strike.
Joining us now, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Maurer, who served as a judge advocate general. He's now a professor of law at Ohio Northern University College of Law. Professor, retired Lieutenant Colonel Maurer, thank you very much for being here. There are so many questions that we all have, just given that intro, that I just want to put up the Department of Defense Law of War Manual, the definition of a shipwreck. The shipwrecked may be understood to include those in distress at sea or stranded on the coast who are also helpless. To be considered shipwrecked, persons must be in need of assistance and care, and they must refrain from any hostile act. The Wall Street Journal reported on Friday, Admiral Bradley asked legal advisor about definition of a shipwreck. The Wall Street Journal reports before making the decision to fire, Bradley told lawmakers he had asked his legal advisor to provide him the definition of a shipwreck, seeking to determine whether the damaged vessel was off limits to attack under the law of war. Deciding it wasn't, he proceeded with the deadly second strike. You're a former JAG. Would you have said to Admiral Bradley that that the survivors of the initial strike it would be proper to fire upon them on a second strike? Were they, by definition, shipwrecked?
Emphatically, they were shipwrecked. I think law enforcement required either, because when they are captured, they're not prosecuted. They're simply deported. So it begs the question, why are we killing some and deporting others for doing exactly the same thing? But to your original question, there's no universe in which these individuals should be considered hostile actors, either under a law enforcement paradigm of law or under a law of war paradigm. Importantly, this is not a law of war paradigm either, because we're not in an actual armed conflict with these individuals. It's a false narrative.
In September, on September 2nd, this strike, they killed them in this second strike. In October, there were also 2 survivors, to your point, and they took them and sent them right back to their country, supported them to their country. Repatriated, thank you. One of the questions that I have is the language that the administration is using, right? They are calling these folks combatants, which at best it seems like they could be, we don't have any evidence, could be drug runners, right? Like at best, based on what we know. But the classification matters, right? Calling this a war on narco-terrorists, because it starts to unlock, it seems, for this administration, certain military authorities, right? They are calling them combatants, so they believe they're in the legal right, because there's one way to treat civilians and drug runners, and there's another way that the military treats armed or not armed combatants.
That's correct. But just simply calling them terrorists or narco-terrorists does not make them so. It does not unlock some hidden lethal power under the law to do this.
How does that definition change? Like, what is if you were still in JAG, you were watching this, how do you guys determine who is a combatant who needs to be dealt with under the rules of war and not just the rules of law?
Right. So in order to be a combatant, there has to actually be an armed conflict. An armed conflict means something kind of specific under international law. And this isn't it. It doesn't have to simply be, one nation against another nation. We did 20 years plus of the global war on terror, which was not one nation against other nations. It was nations against organized armed groups. That also has a definition under the law, which JAGs know and advise commanders on. And the Secretary of Defense ought to know that as well. He also has lawyers, as does the White House. These are not hidden terms. It's well known. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, these are groups that were organized armed groups, non-state actors, for which we had arguably domestic legal authority to go after because we had an AUMF, an authorization for use of military force, and arguably an international legal basis under self-defense. None of those apply to narco-terrorists.
Language being used by people like Senator Duckworth is astounding and correct. I want to make that clear, but it's still nonetheless a little jarring to hear. Because it's one thing for me colloquially to say as a commentator, right? I'm not, reporting on this as an official reporter. I'm a commentator. I come with my biases and my opinions fully clear. When I say, or another progressive YouTuber says, what Trump and Negձeth is doing is killing people. It's murder, right? There's a colloquial thing to say like that. It's another thing to hear a senator say that. And especially a senator like Duckworth, who's not only respected, but has served her country in the military. Somebody who understands how serious that M word is when it comes to accusing fellow American service people and the American military, all the way up to, yes, the Secretary of Defense and the Commander-in-Chief, aka Donald Trump, of murder. Because in the military, that's a specific distinction from, you're fighting a battle and one of the soldiers takes a life. That's the military. We can like it or hate it, but it is what it is. But not all actions amount to crimes. And when you start throwing around the M word, that's distinct from a lawful killing, right? And so, what she's effectively saying is this is a crime. It's very bold for her to say that, and she would not say that lightly. She's not just yapping on the internet like some of us, right? Like, she's a senator who served her country with valiant effort, and because of that, her words have a lot of weight. And what she's effectively saying is, I understand that the military, from time to time, needs to end lives to achieve its objectives. That's the dark reality of the military. There's been moments where I've probably, like, for example, World War II, I would have supported that. The Iraq and Afghanistan wars, injustices that should have never happened, right? Like, we all have these distinctions. But it goes from, this is a specific policy I disagree with, to what Trump and Negձeth did amounts to murder. And we need to hear this more.